Go ahead and get started with our afternoon lunch panel procedure, Women Remaking Medicine Volume 1. We're very fortunate to have here today with us the author of the book, Hemalee Peters, someone who I've known many years now, and some panelists that are featured in her book, Dr. Patel and Dr. Collins. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Emily.
Great. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me? I think my microphone, oh yeah, it's nice and loud now. Wow, good, they turned me up. So hi, my name is Emily, and I'm the author of this beautiful book that is going to be for sale in the lobby about women who are remaking medicine. And it's my real honor to be here with you today on International Women's Day to talk about healthcare and innovation and all the different ways to create change in a way that feels really personal and comfortable and authentic to you. You don't all have to go and start companies and become the CEO. There's a lot of different ways to remake medicine. And I have two women here with me today who are great examples of just how much one person can do to help individual people as well as to create systemic change in healthcare. So I would love to have each of our panelists first talk about a couple women who've inspired them and to give us a brief introduction into what they're doing.
Thank you. I'm Hemalee Patel. I'm a physician, and thank you for having me. Thanks, Emily, for featuring me in your book. Let's see, two women that inspire me are my mom and my sister, who's also a physician, who at a very early age told me I should go into medical school. And I was like, no, you're doing that. I don't want to do it. And then at the end of college, decided, actually, wait, I do want to go to medical school and help me figure this out. What I'm doing now is I work as a physician in internal medicine. I have a specific interest in nutrition or preventative health care, almost like style medicine is what we termed it as. And then also looking at physician burnout and how we can utilize those same measures to help improve physician care. I'm very interested in digital health and advise for a couple companies, and then also love to empower physicians to do the same so that we can bring empathy into digital health.
And Asha, I know you have a very special guest in the audience here. Asha's mom is here all the way from Michigan.
First of all, I definitely just want to thank you for inviting me here today. Also sort of Nevro and Watermark as well too. And also a lot of my mom would come too. She sort of traveled cars here this weekend for my birthday, so it just means a ton to sort of support us and support me. So thank you. And speaking of the two women who've inspired me, so of course my mother is one of them. I grew up in Detroit. My mom was a single mother and had lots of things going on, and she just sacrificed a ton to make sure that I had what I needed and that I could be supported and also that I could succeed and thrive. And so she's one person who's been a huge source of inspiration and motivation for me. And another person that's also been a huge inspiration is actually a previous boss of mine, who is one of the first women professors at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I went to grad school. She eventually sort of chaired the pharmacology department, and she just really blazed trails as a scientist. And she also took ballet lessons because she wanted to. And so, exactly, she just sort of really created her own path. And so she would sort of lead these, like chairing these department meetings and go like, there's this intro ballet class. Because she just wanted to do that. And I think she, even in sort of so she eventually, she passed away of sort of breast cancer, but she, even in her last days, she had dance parties where she would get her entire lab together and just dance, because she was like, this is still our life, I'm going to take advantage of every single moment of it. And I think that was the way that she lived and the way that she sort of went about everything in her life. Just gives me sort of inspiration to just go forward and be very bold. And in that, I feel like I've sort of taken a little bit of that in my current role that I have. I currently work at Genentech Roche. I lead their clinical trials for the US. I've only been in this role for about 9 months, and it was a very different path for me to sort of take on this role. I've had a very sort of circuitous career path. I've done drug supply chain work before. I've been in research. I've done bioterrorism reporting before. I've worked in the government before. I'm trained as a cancer biologist, and at the end of the day, what I'm looking to do is really have impact at scale in healthcare, and also very specifically clinical operations. So that's what I do today.
We are so lucky to have both of them here today because they are so busy. myself, so I run a digital health brand strategy studio, and then I'm also now an author and running a publishing company focused on healthcare. And one thing that I wanted to do before we got too deep is to do a show of hands. So how many people are on the health technology side, like me? A couple? Yeah, health technology side. All right, who's on the clinical side? Woo, okay, about a third, and then how many on the research, pharma, life sciences side? Okay, I love it. It's a really good, even split. Is anybody else who are missing who wants to make sure that we shout out what division of healthcare you're working? Engineering side, okay, that's a great side. Good. So, before we get into more questions, we want to take audience questions with you guys too. I wanted to share how I decided to write the book. So I had worked in digital health for 10 years, and 2 years ago, I became a patient myself. I almost died in childbirth of an amniotic fluid embolism. So I basically bled to death about 5 minutes after my daughter was born. And I was saved, sorry, I know you guys are eating lunch, but we'll go faster. So I was saved by blood donors, and thankfully I had a very quick recovery. But that process really sparked in me, there's not time to wait, right? I have this daughter now. I think you guys can probably recognize, there's nobody coming to fix the issues in healthcare. It's us. We need to fix the issues in healthcare. And the way that I can do that as somebody who works in marketing and as a former journalist and as a writer is to tell the stories of women who are creating change. And so for me, it was about writing a book and using my storytelling ability to help inspire others to create change. I would love, Hemalee, maybe you could talk about the way that you use your superpower to make medicine better for everybody.
Yeah, happy to. I became interested in medicine, so I always was interested in nutrition, but more for my own learning when I was younger. I was really unhealthy, and I would always see, my sister and my brother, and they would be really active, and they were thinner, and I was a chubby little child. I was a tomboy, and I would always ask, how do I get like that? And I remember going to our doctor's office, our family doctor's office, and asking him, and he told me, he's like, well, just fill up a plate of food and just eat 20% of it, and that's how you'll lose weight. And I remember walking out, and I told my mom, because I loved donuts at the time, I still love donuts, but I love donuts, and I was like, see, I can fill up my plate and have an entire plate of donuts, and if I eat 20% of it, that's fine. And my mom looked at me like, oh my gosh, and she really catapulted me into learning about nutrition. And she was like, look, if you're interested, we lived in Santa Cruz, and there's an abundance of health and wellness workshops there. And she's like, why don't you just start to educate yourself on nutrition? And I did. At the age of 14, I started learning about nutrition, turned around my entire nutrition trajectory, saw that there was a huge increase in my performance and my energy and my efficiency. My sports I played better sports and I was a better student. And then my parents also started to adopt these same habits more to support me. At that time, my mom had been diagnosed with diabetes, and I just remember the look of shock when the doctor told her, you have diabetes, now here's a medication that you need, and that's it. Now, looking at all the different things she could have done, and she was extremely motivated at the time, she probably wouldn't need to be on those medications. But just seeing the look register on her face and seeing that disempowerment, now as a physician, and really what sparked me to go into medicine was to show that you can actually have such an impact on your patients without the use of medications. Not to say that you don't need medications, but there's actually so much that you can do if you just give people the tools and the education to really be able to understand a lot of their disease states. And so that's what I love to do now. I worked in the hospital as a hospitalist, and I was on the cardiothoracic floor with a lot of patients who unfortunately had seen the after effects. I was already dealing with surgeries related to heart disease, and afterwards they have such an epiphany of their life and just what they're going to do going forward. But part of the after visit was always chatting about nutrition and fitness and mindfulness and just ways that they really should understand how to cultivate a lifestyle after going through this, which then pushed me into wanting to do this more regularly and routinely, and seeing patients outside of the hospital in a more traditional setting. And then, friends also asking and seeing that we're seeing a large amount of chronic diseases being diagnosed earlier, and looking at what is going on in our lifestyle that is causing this. And I think a lot of it is chronic stress and social media and tech, and I think there's a beautiful way that you can merge the two together, but really giving patients back that level of understanding on really how to control your lifestyle, not letting your lifestyle control you, so that you can prevent these diseases that unfortunately we're seeing at a much earlier age.
I think one of the frustrations that you've seen, and I think that probably a lot of us can recognize as well, is that we work in healthcare, and our systems and our education and our lives are not necessarily always that healthy, right? Medical school is a place where it's extremely unhealthy. The stress burden and the fatigue and the push, to have people be operating in the red for years and years and years during their education. So that's another area where we're trying to fix everyone else and try to look inside and fix ourselves too at the same time.
Well, and to your point, I went to decided to go to medical school at the end of my junior year of college, and I had a very idealistic view on what medical school was going to be like, and everybody would be super healthy, and there's definitely this mentality when you go there, work hard, play hard, and all of this will get pushed once you're done. And I was listening to the panelist speaking earlier this morning that that doesn't necessarily happen, and you really need to take care of yourself now. And so it was a really steep learning curve in that sense as well. I don't want to wait until I'm done with medical school and residency to take care of myself. How do I figure this out now? And then how do you empower young physicians who are in medical school and residency and newly out to do the same?
And it's not just in medicine. I think all across healthcare, we see that about 80% of the healthcare workforce is women, but at the leadership levels, it's less than 10%, right? And there's this sense of, to be a top physician or to be the head of a major multinational company or to start something, you have to sacrifice everything else in your life. You have to live this very unhealthy, very unbalanced lifestyle. And I think what I really love with the stories of the women in the book is that you're showing that there's a different way. You can still be incredibly powerful and successful and create change, but not necessarily following that same model of being somebody who's really unhealthy or who is burning bridges left and right. Asha, working in a big company, do you see that yourself as well?
I see it all the time, right? And I think it really is a misconception, right? So to Molly's point, I think one, we have a lot of data that actually says when you're not sleeping, you're basically intoxicated, right? You have significant compromised cognitive capabilities, right? And that's true when you're not eating right, when you're not sleeping right too. And I think the people who have sustained success too, I think we're seeing this more and more, are people who do have those boundaries. So they say, I'm actually going to stop doing this now so that I can go to sleep. I'm going to stop doing this now so that I can leave and spend time with my family. I'm going to stop doing this now so that I can go and actually work out. Because one of the things that I think for me has been really helpful in terms of really maximizing my productivity is understanding where my boundaries are and where I am the most effective. And I'm the most effective when I have X amount of hours of sleep, when I have a certain diet, and when I'm exercising a number of times too. And also when I have a number of hours sort of per week in my calendar that are just blocked off for me thinking. And I think if I don't have those things, then it's just diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And I think more and more leaders are beginning to understand that that's the model that we need to have for our emerging leaders and also for our leaders that are currently leading organizations today too.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you guys saw the Lean In study that they've been doing now for I think 4 or 5 years with McKinsey. And so they actually announced this year on stage that leaning in does not work. They studied it and they said women are asking for raises, they're raising their hands, they're asking for promotions, and it's not working. So take that pressure off yourself. The leaning in is it's not gonna work. Relax. But the thing that they did say that worked, which I thought was really interesting, is as soon as there's more than one woman in the room, as soon as there's 2 women in the room, everything starts to change. Because the 2 women start to support each other. Women, I think, often find it easier to raise their hand and say, hey, what you just said to her wasn't fair, versus saying, hey, what you just said to me isn't fair. That's a lot harder for a lot of us, right? And so as soon as you get 2 women in the room, you have this little power duo to start transforming things and to start creating change. So thinking more about how can you bring somebody else in the room with you, right? When you're in that board meeting or pitch session, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like an equal, but can you bring somebody even younger up with you? Have you guys seen that two in the room effect?
Yeah, definitely as a young, coming right out of residency in a very male-dominated field, I was one of two on this cardiothoracic surgical floor, and everybody else was male, and they're already looking at you like, what are you doing here? And you're wondering, what am I doing here? But the fact that there was another female who can support you and you were able to push both your measures actually really helped a lot.
I definitely feel like I've been a recipient of having that more junior person come to the meetings with you. And also, so I think a number of my mentors and former managers have done that with me, where they would go to sort of board level meetings and I would be sort of brought along to present either a very small part or just to sort of listen and learn and be able to sort of really sort of give that back to the rest of the organization. And that really led a path for me to have communications and conversations with those other executives.
I love today.
Absolutely, I try to do that as much as possible with all of my colleagues and all of my team members too.
How many people here brought someone with them to this conference today? Any people who brought a couple? All right, good. So you guys are bringing people with you. You brought your mom. There you go. Yeah, I mean, even just today, the Dalai Lama tweeted. Did you see that women are more collaborative, more generous leaders, and that we need more women leaders? The Dalai Lama says that, you guys, we have to make that happen. Okay, we cannot miss the point. Dalai Lama.
I think she goes hand in hand with like the two women in a room, right? So I think sometimes our collaborative leadership style looks very different, right? But once you have someone else in the room too who also recognizes that as leadership versus sort of giving up power, I think that also helps with the balance too, and also bringing more people in.
Yeah, and they said in that study that, when it's the one woman in the room, she's in survival mode. And so that's when you kind of get sometimes the mean girl activity, or that person just being like, I'm a total workaholic, I work 90 hours a week and I never sleep and I have no life. As soon as you get that second person in the room, gives you a little bit more, you can like help each other, relax a little bit more, still keep working hard, but you don't have to be that stereotype of like the power suit, shoulder pads kind of person, right, anymore. Another great story I saw today too was that actually, if your mom works, you are going to earn way more money as a woman. So who here had a mom who worked? Yeah, look at us all. That's amazing. So imagine how incredible our kids are going to be, how much money they're going to make. It's really good. So one thing I'd love to talk with our panel too is about kind of the concept of inventory. This is something that my business coach brought to me, but we only have so many hours in the day. And we're trying to create incredible change in the biggest and most cost-driven sector that impacts every single person in the country in healthcare, right? So how do you decide what to work on? You both have so many side hustle, side projects that you're working on. So how do you decide what to take on when you say no to something? We'll start with you.
Yeah, at first I would say yes to everything, and one day found myself in a committee that had no relevance to anything that I was doing. And I had this epiphany, like, what am I doing here? And then spoke to a mentor of mine, and she was like, you can say no. And that was the first time I actually had that authority, and also it helped that she was a female in a pretty executive role, just say no. And where do you want to spend your time? Because I was noticing that it was distracting me from the things I actually wanted to get done. And I would come home frustrated and feeling like I didn't get to impact in the way that I wanted to impact. And so being very thoughtful about, it's exciting to get offered certain things and you want to say yes to everything. Because you're thinking, oh, well, this may lead to X or this may lead to Y, but just be very strategic because you only have so many hours in the day. You should be taking care of yourself as well. And some things can fall at the wayside for a little bit and you can pick them back up. And so I think for me, it's just setting goals and figuring out, like, does this actually align with my own personal values and mission statement? And does it align with eventually what I want to do, and then how can I best prioritize that to then also get the other things I need to get done.
And you made an interesting choice because you were on a very high performance path in academic medicine. We'll say it was at Stanford. It's not in the book, it's in the hospital. But you actually took yourself out of that, which felt very risky at the time, in order to make yourself have room in your career to do the things you really wanted to So now you're working with Facebook, you're working at One Medical, you're doing all these other things. That was probably a pretty risky
Yeah.
decision.
I mean, yeah, I think that it was all for the best. I think being in an academic institution like that teaches you a lot. You're also surrounded by brilliant minds and great mentors that can kind of help you focus, but you almost get in this golden handcuff syndrome where you feel like there's no chance of you being able, like your identity as a physician or as someone working there is tied to that. So my colleagues would say, like, why would you want to leave? Like, this is great. How could you even think about wanting to go do something else? And so leaving was, it felt a little scary. And then you feel almost very free because you have so many other possibilities and options available, and you've seen other people do it in the way that they wanted to do it. But for me, it was also just, I want to practice medicine in a very specific way, allowing myself also to have these interests that I think actually come together and merge and will merge at some point. And so where do those things align? And I see that with even, my friends at, it's not just in medicine, I see that with my friends who are working at big companies, where I can see it in their eyes, like they probably should leave, and they're like, oh, just like 2 more years or 3 more years, and it just doesn't happen. And it's like, they all have to get there on their own, but you can see that their sense of purpose is becoming lost. And so we do this exercise, and I do it with my patients as well, which is, revisit, like write down your personal mission statement. I mean, I had to do that in residency, and I thought it was great because then you could refer back when you're kind of thinking like, what am I doing? Refer back to that, because that's actually why you went into this field in the first place, and it reminds you of the things that are important.
And Asha, so counterpoint, because you are still in massive organization, but you've moved around a lot, so you made some of those tough choices probably yourself too, right?
I have actually. So I did my PhD and then went to postdoc and then sort of left the academic track as well too, to actually go to DC and go into science policy. And that was a big sort of risky move, and definitely had people tell me that I was making a mistake when I did it, and you can sort of relate to that.
Such helpful advice.
Yeah, very directive, right? I did a lot with that. And then I left policy and I went to management consulting. And I left management consulting and went to the client world. And then I left that and then went actually into drug supply chain. And then left that and now I'm at a big pharma. So it took sort of just a lot of different sort of paths too. But again, I think what really helps is that I have a very clear mission statement for myself. And even now, I sort of work at sort of big pharma, but I also do all these other things as well too, as you sort of alluded to. One of them like angel investing, I try to do a lot of talking, and then also just a lot of pulling together like-minded people. And for me, it's the way that I am able to say the yes or no is because for me it's all the same thing, right? It's all aligned to the thing that I'm here to do, and that's really make a really big impact on healthcare, sort of at scale, and really bring some underrepresented or underserved populations into an era of better healthcare.
Yeah.
So because it's always thinking about that one thing, it's easier, not easy, but easier to figure out what I can do and what I can't do.
And, question.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, we have somewhere a microphone over here. Run up. We're all family here.
Yes, so I was wondering, can you tell me what is your mission statement, and then how did you identify like the process steps? Because I'm trying to figure that out for myself.
Sorry. So mine is, so it's actually basically what I just said, sort of about my goal is to have impact at healthcare at scale, and especially bring sort of underserved populations to an era where they're actually served in a more personalized way. The other part that I also did too is actually outline my values. And so I have 5 values. One is mindfulness, excellence, building people and companies, empowering people, and then friendship, family, and fellowship. So those are the things that also really ground me, and also really try to keep those things sort of in balance, and also really try to share that out with everyone that I'm working with so that I can also work in the most productive way with people as well. And so the process, it's continual first, and I think I just sort of just started writing. I think sort of had sort of this sort of, prompt to do it. And I really just started writing down all the things that I'd done, and then tried to understand what were those things, and where did I also find myself where I had the most energy. And then from that, I tried to sort of pull out what was almost evident in actually where I wanted to put my time.
And before we get to money, like the great secret of those of us who have kind of broken away several times is that it's not that hard to make money doing the things that you want to do. It's like a giant secret. They don't tell you. Like they tell you, like, oh, you need to stay in this job and this path. This is the right way. It's like secret, you guys. It's like not that hard to do the things. I mean, it's hard work. It is hard, but it's not that hard.
Yeah.
You're gonna work hard no matter what.
You're gonna work hard no matter what. You might as well do it on the things that you want to do. And life is so short. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Like you want to make sure you're spending every minute doing the things you want to do. Right.
Yeah.
Your personal mission.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar to what Asha said. I think for me it was figuring out what makes me happy as me personally, and that's, you know, staying healthy, my friends, my family, my spirituality, and then, you know, just giving back in a way that's really meaningful, and healthcare is that to me. And then what are my goals professionally and what are my goals personally? And they kind of all align up, but I literally did like 3 columns, and then just who am I as a person? And I think that as long as you stay true to who you are, and then you're delivering authenticity in whatever you're doing moving forward, like that should be your personal mission statement. That I think can resonate and should resonate through everything else that you're doing, whether it's professional or personal. There should be key alignments. And then I go back every now and then and just either highlight or pull out different words that I've used that I see a pattern in. And it shouldn't be, and don't sit there and spend like all day doing it, because you won't figure it out and you'll spin. But I was an English minor in college, and like at some point I wrote thus, and I was like, this is not me. Going back to like, you know, Jane Austen days. But I think that if you start slowly and just, you know, first thing in the morning or whenever you have your quiet time, you start to write out things that are really important to you over the course of like a few days or a week or so, just keep coming back and revisiting, you'll actually have like a very nice outline of what that is. And then it may change, but it's actually really reflective too. I mean, everything, I look at failure as a huge success as well, because I think that you learn so much, and so many times we're kind of just spinning and we don't take that time to reflect. So it's actually a good reflective process too. Like, I thought I liked this, but then it didn't necessarily work. Well, what about that didn't work, and where do I fall in, and was I not aligned? And most of the time, if not all, you'll find that there was probably a misalignment between your values, your mission statement, and what you were working on.
Yeah. It needs to be so authentic.
Yeah.
You can't be somebody you're not genuinely wanting to be. 1 second, and then I'll take a question. But I wanted to say also, Pinterest can be a great tool for this. If you're not a writer, have a little pin board. It can be secret if you want, and just kind of start dumping stuff in there as you see it. And it's amazing how you'll see patterns evolve. And so my personal mission is more around like the visual world, because I work in brand strategy. But it's about a bolder, brighter healthcare future for everyone. And so to bring in that visual element, it can be writing or pictures, thinking about how you want your future to be. Yes.
I just did this exercise with.
Just be really loud.
I
Get it back to everyone.
just did this exercise for myself personally, and my core mission and values, and also for my team, as the medical director at my clinic. And what I found most helpful for me was when I was told to think of 3 aspirational words. So it's along the lines of your Pinterest board.
Yeah.
It's along the lines of what you said, what gave you energy. For me, they were, where do you want to be, or how do you want to see yourself, even if you're not living that right now? What is it that you strive towards? And what it does is it directs your behavior when you come up against a decision point that you need to figure out. So for me, mine are faith, directive, fearless, and focused. And because of that, when I'm in a position where I'm saying, should I say this, should I do this, like right now, should I say this, should I do this? I don't know who it is going to help, but I got the faith direction to say, I need to say this. Fearless, because it can be nerve-wracking to get up and speak to people. And focused, because there's something bigger than me that I'm here to do. And so that's why I think the 3 aspirational words, if that's a simple way to start, it can be much more elaborate than that, but that might be something that gets people started too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's because it is hard. I mean, we're up here acting real confident and like we have it all totally together and everything is so easy. But I mean, those voices,
To be very clear.
those voices of self-doubt can be so loud, especially I think for women, of like, I'm not making enough change, I'm not good enough, my book is not good enough, like I'm not getting what I need to, you're not, like I'm not fixing every problem in the world. How do you guys deal with the negative voices, the negative pressures? Asha?
Yeah, I think those definitely come to, and one, I sort of take a step back and try to just sort of look back, right? I think that's really helpful, and I think someone actually helped me to do that one time too, when I was having all this negative self-talk and sort of sharing it with someone. And they were like, oh, so when you did X, Y, Z, did you also feel that way? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, oh, when you accomplished X, Y, Z. And I was like, okay, well then maybe this is me. It's not real. So one, just reflect on the things that you have done, because I'm sure all of us have done things that one, we never thought we would be able to do. And that also just really amazing too, that what sort of feeds that sort of even surprise us at our capabilities. So that's one thing I try to just keep as a reminder to reflect. Again, I think it just goes back to that reflection piece again.
Hemalee, how do you keep the voices in?
Yeah, it's a good question. Gratitude is something that I really enjoy practicing. It's something that I do with my patients as well, just because it's quick and it's easy, but it also just gives you perspective that, because we're all so lucky to be here and we all have amazing lives in comparison to others, and so I think it just keeps perspective in terms of what you're doing and where you're moving forward. And I think in our society, we're supposed to do things right now, and I actually was at this longevity summit recently, and this woman who studies this was just like, well, who said right now? Like, who said that you need to have X, Y, and Z by the time you're 40? Why can't you take a break and revisit that in your 50s? And there's studies that actually show that you actually live longer and happier and have a better quality of life than well into your 80s and 90s. And it actually really resonated, because I have a lot of patients that will come in that will talk about, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm so stressed out, and it's kind of just like, well, you can take a break, it's okay, and things can be a little bit flexible. This whole concept of having everything right now, it's not, even if you want it, you can do it, good for you, but are you really enjoying it? Are you really like being in the moment, thinking about your life and what you're actually doing, or are you doing this thing where, and I've been there, and I'm sure we all have, where, 6 months go by and you're kind of like, I don't even know where the last 6 months were. Like, I know I had fun because I have all these pictures on Instagram, but like, I don't really remember doing a lot of this stuff. So I think that just keeps it in perspective. Like, when I feel like, oh my gosh, I need to do 100 things and I need to get them all done by the end of the month, it's kind of just like, no, you'll probably do a better job just kind of going at your own pace anyway.
I also snap out of it by doing something nice for someone else.
Yeah.
Sometimes I find that that's
Totally, yeah.
easier. So I'll like write a random LinkedIn review for, like, if I'm feeling really down, or I'll send like a card to someone, or like it just kind of snaps you sometimes out of that cycle more than like it might take me a whole day to like convince myself
Totally, yeah.
that my project was good. Where like I can write something nice for someone else and I kind of feel better by the half day.
Another thing that I also do too is actually just sort of stop and say, like, if I should think that I should be doing more or having more success with X, Y, Z, like, what actually can I control to change that, right? And then if I sort of do that inventory, and if there's something that I can do, then I should just simply do it. And if there's nothing I can do, then I need to move on to the next thing. So I also try to just make it very sort of practical, like, okay, I should be doing that, well, what would that look like, and what can I do today to change that?
There are so many problems in healthcare, right? So many. And like, you cannot fix all of them. Like, not any one person, like Superman, cannot fix all of them. So like, pick your problem, work on that one, go on to the next one. What other questions do we have? Any other questions? No? We can keep talking. Okay, so let's talk about what are things that you want to do that you have not yet had time to do, or that have not made it into your inventory that you would love to be doing in the future, or that you would love someone in this room to take on and do for you. That's another way of doing it, is delegating.
That's a really good point.
I'm always looking for ways selfishly to, and I think that there's definitely healing and there's studies that support this, but bringing more humanities and creativity into medicine in whatever, actually in any field. And so, I love art, I love design. I sit on the San Francisco Ballet Auxiliary Board, and part of that is because it's such a break from my everyday, and I think it's something that's so nice to have. And so I think at some point it would be lovely to cultivate more or meld the two together, because I think that there's so much synergy in creativity and also just kind of self-soothing in the way that art and music and dance can actually do. So really supporting and challenging other people to support others, kind of like your mentor who went to ballet class. I mean, I think that's a lovely thing. Like, there's so many physicians that are artists on the side or amazing pianists and cellists and singers, and they don't ever really talk about it. But at Stanford, actually, they have like a medical humanities department, and they showcase these physicians, and it's so lovely for young like medical students to see this and say you don't have to actually hide behind that. That's actually something you should be proud of, and that's actually a skill that you can use, and I think it makes you a more relatable physician to your patient. It builds that relationship, and so just really melding the two, I think, is something that I know will happen. It's something that I love.
Well, I love your story because like part of your story is about leaving stuff behind, but also part of your story is that you felt less burned out and more powerful, like when you were adding more stuff on.
Yeah, that's actually
So
very
sometimes
true.
that's like a hard thing of like, I feel tired all the time, I feel demotivated. It's kind of counterintuitive to think about like, I'm going to add some more stuff into my life, right? But sometimes that is what you need to get something that's like a little different that reinvigorates you.
Yeah. No, that's totally true. I mean, that's part of like when I feel like I'm exhausted, I will pull open like, a random magazine that's like filled with different stuff, or I'll look at something really pretty, or I'll listen to like beautiful music, and it actually helps me kind of de-stress, and then I can actually do more. And I think it's picking things and having a variety. For me, for sure, it's having a variety. Like, I need that flexibility in order to have that level to then be able to perform in the way that I need to.
It's also about like the cognitive capabilities, right? Like you're like resting part of your brain and then like invigorating another part of it so that you can sort of come back to the other side, right? Yeah. It needed to be a neuroscience in my other life. I love the brain, no problem.
Well, Asha, in addition to everything else that you've been doing, you also hiked to the base camp of Kilimanjaro. Like how many months? Or of Everest. Sorry, excuse me. And it was not that long after you had double hip surgery.
Yeah.
Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, sure. It's a really interesting story. Or I guess you guys should be the judge of that. So I was actually born with hip dysplasia, but it wasn't diagnosed until I was almost 30. And so I was having sciatic pain. I didn't understand why. They thought I slipped disc, but then eventually found out that I actually just had like these hip joints that were just sort of sockets that were not deep enough. Long story short, I ended up getting both my hips replaced. Or actually, maybe that's what take a step back. I actually ended up going in for surgery to get the first one replaced. And then there was actually an issue with the surgery. So once they actually opened up my right hip, or right sort of hip outside of it at the bone, they realized that the surgical equipment wasn't actually sterilized, and so they had to close me back up. And so then I had to go back under surgery 2 more times to sort of get the hips. And so it should become a full cyborg. So, but it was really difficult, as you can imagine, especially because I was actually really excited about getting the new hip because I was in such pain. And so once I sort of woke up, and I was also quite friendly with my doctor, and I was like, hey doc, am I a cyborg now? And he was like, he has some news to tell you, Asha. And so we had to go through that process instead of understanding what that meant, what I was going to do next. And eventually a couple of weeks later, actually just a few weeks later, went back under again too, which just took another sort of leap of faith for me to do that as well with the same team. And then eventually I sort of got the second one done as well, again. And so that's why after going through that, I was like, I really need to do something to show, to like reclaim my power and my strength and agency. And so I was like, well, what can I do? And so I was like, well, maybe I'll climb the base camp of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
You know, just do that.
One does.
One does 12 months later afterwards, and so that's what I did. So I got my hips done, my mother's making commentary. I got my hips done in December 2017, and then December 2018 I went to Kathmandu and sort of did the climb, and was actually amazingly intimidated when I got there because, of course, it was an REI trip, so it was quite cushy in those regards. But everyone else who was there had done Kilimanjaro before, had done Machu Picchu, had done like one guy had like scaled Mont Blanc before. These other people sort of lived in Colorado, like a bike at 11,000 feet, like for the weekend. And I'd never really backpacked before. I had these new hips, and you know, they were concerned for me as well. And so I realized at that point, I was like, oh, I guess this is useful.
And you came back and you came to the book launch party the next day.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So, no big deal.
Touchdown. 23 later, I was there.
Yeah, but what an amazing story. Again, like every time you're a patient or you interact with a healthcare system, you see these parts where like, if you have a better sterile processing department, if you have RFID on your instruments, if you have your surgical scheduling figured out, you don't have to have extra surgery. I mean, these are things that anybody can work on. I hope that you guys are inspired to help fix some of these problems. Yeah.
Sorry, I have another question.
Come on up.
Just say your name now.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm Sarah Kalick. I work for Nevro, by the way, too. So,
Great. And this will be our last question. We're going to wrap up after this.
so something that I find lacking in the medicine field of medicine is that there isn't really a feedback loop. Like, for example, I'd go to a doctor and I had a muscle spasm, and he just would recommend to me like a muscle relaxer. But what he's actually doing is cutting the feedback loop for me to actually identify what the issue is. Is it my posture? Is it, like, there's a variety of reasons. And so I think that, like, in the field of medicine, I would really like to, I guess what I was wanting to ask you guys is what specific areas in the field of medicine are lacking. In my perspective, it was that feedback loop, but I wanted to see, like, what you thought and then how I could kind of
Okay, we're going to take over the entire rest of the day to talk
Exactly.
about problems in medicine. But let's just do like our top 2 or 3
Yeah,
each, because there are so many.
I mean, that's a valid issue and concern that comes up all the time, and I think it's pressing your physician. I mean, I think I'm a physician, but I've also had family members on the receiving end of healthcare, and it's very interesting what their physician says to them, what they just blindly trust and hear. And it's really about empowering the patient. I mean, your physician can only do so much for you, but you almost need to push back a little bit and be your own advocate, because that's when the interesting stuff happens. And I think that, I mean, I'll give an example of my dad has rheumatoid arthritis, and he'll go to the doctor and, you know, I can't make it to all his appointments, and the doctor will tell him like 5 different things, and then, you know, specific things that I've asked to bring up, and then I'll call my dad and be like, well, Dad, so what did they say? And I'm like, oh, no, everything was fine. I'm like, that's, what did they say? And he's like, no, nothing. And my mom's sitting there frustrated because she's like, I knew he had XYZ and we just didn't bring it up. And so, you know, writing down, I always tell patients as well, like, write down, if you have physical ailments or medical conditions, write it down almost as like a story. And be that advocate, be that champion, because you, along with your provider, will make that change together. And I would almost assume that, you know, asking your physician, I would hope that asking your physician, like, well, can we get to the root cause of this? They would actually respect that and almost sit down and be like, yeah, actually, that's actually very thoughtful, let's sit down. Because I don't like just having someone come in and prescribing something. And I sometimes will have patients that will come in and be like, I need a prescription for Adderall. I'm like, that's great, I'm not gonna give that to you. Like, why do you need that? Oh, because my friend has it. You know, it's just like, let's have a conversation. I'm not just gonna blindly, but I think that we've become, I think, you know, the medical system has become like this to a certain extent, and so it's really just working with your provider and taking back that autonomy.
Asha, we're going to wrap up, but like last, what's your a frustration that you want to change in healthcare?
Well, the fact that patients have to pay and have to actually bear costs being clinical trials.
That's a good one. All right, well, thank you so much. Obviously, we could talk all day with all of you, and we would love to, but we will have the books for sale, and we'll be out there during the reception, so thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
I want to once again thank Hemalee and Dr. Patel and Dr. Collins for coming out, and Dr. Collins